And do we have our, what's? Yeah. Okay. Well, here comes Pat. Giddy up. Ready, Pat? She did not, yeah, because I asked her, she said no. Yeah, I will make sure. Just have to hit that switch. When you talk.
Yep,
Right?
Yep, but only have it on when you talk. Yep, now it's on, so flip it forward.
There. Okay. We started a little late. It's about 4:17 on July 16th, and I called this Transit Commission meeting to order with a quorum present. We are missing a member, Jen Bizarro. It did not come up on WebEx yet, but she may. I want everyone to know before we start, we have a hard stop. We need to, we have a 5:15, stop time. So last month, our meeting went well over our usual hour. So I just want to, if I have to, I'm going to pull things back and table them before we go over our allotted time so we can get through everything. The first item on the agenda is public comments. Are there any? Go ahead.
Hi, good afternoon, council members. My name is William Harris. I'm Marathon County Board Supervisor for District 3, and I'm here just to advocate on behalf of transit service for Island Place residents on River Drive. The transit director had submitted a possible proposal for J. I would like to submit for the board to think about two separate other options. Currently, right now, the transit director mentioned the fact that to add Island Place to most stops would increase speed times, which he wanted to stick to around 12. However, when I look at the speed times for a majority of the bus stops currently now, there's only one bus stop that currently runs at 12.7 miles per hour, and that's Route A. The longest route length is 8.28 miles with a speed time of 16.6 miles, and that's Route H. I would propose that we add an Island Place stop to Route I, actually. If we added it, it would increase the route length to 8.8 miles, which is pretty close to H, and only a speed time of 17.6 miles per hour would be required, which is a difference of 1 extra mile per hour from Route H. Reason why I think Route I would be ideal too is because not only does it go through Stewart, where they could stop at a lot of different shops and stuff, but it also goes to the hospitals and stuff. I think they're an underserved part of this community, and they've been requesting transit service, and there are people that actually would use it. A lot of them are retired. We need more people to use the service so that it doesn't go by the wayside of the dinosaurs, and right now, steadily we've been having less and less usage. So why not put it somewhere we actually have increased usage with people who actually need it the most? The other option that I would have the city to consider is there's the option of maybe just smaller little buses with wheelchair accessible services. There is a service out there. I can get more information on it, instead of a large bus, but that would service the area as well so that we could service that community there. So I ask that the board not just please dismiss it, but take some time to think about serving that area. I think it would do a lot for the residents there, and also to increase usage and money for the transit service. Thank you.
Thank you. Is there anyone else?
Deb Ryan, 702 Elm Street. It happens that I live off the bus line for I, and a couple years ago when I changed cars and there was a delay, I used the bus for about 4 months. And it seems with the bus route for I, they're running ahead of time, at least at that time. So if you weren't there early, you're going to have to wait for the next one. I also had emailed Greg if he had looked into this firm that actually buys shuttle buses that are 12 for passengers and 2 for wheelchair accessible in the back entrance. And they have a conversion of new Ford trucks that they do, so to make them wheelchair accessible lifts. And that they have a number of them available now, 2 hours away, and with miles of like 96 miles. So they're not titled yet, and I also had learned in the last week that they're have some arrangement with the state, so going through the procurement process does not require an RFP, and that they do have a few of them available right now, brand new. And so I'm hoping we can bring this up in potentially next month's meeting. And then I happened to run into Danny, who's the lead person at Labor Temple, and just today, and that I'm hoping we can bring up, at least for my neighborhood, concerns about the bus route for at the intersection of 3rd Avenue and Callan, that there is a lot of people there waiting from the Salvation Army, getting services or going there for lunch or getting commodities. And a few weeks ago, there was a bunch of people just waiting in the shade at that intersection, which is at this professional building, which also does WIC services now. And I do think the Labor Temple could potentially be available and move it just across the street, take a couple of their parking spots, so to have room for a shelter there. And so I'm hoping that's something we can bring up at a upcoming meeting. Thank you.
Thank you. And we do have discussion on Island Place on the agenda today. So we will be discussing, we can discuss those suggestions. You want to speak?
Yes, I do.
Okay, here we go.
Thank you. Hi, my name is Jeff Johnson. I'm County Board Supervisor for District 6, and like Supervisor Harris, I serve on the Transportation Coordinating Committee. And I just wanted to put a couple things on your radar. I know they're not on the agenda for today, but I think it's something that this committee might want to look at in the future. The first item is we are looking at moving forward, a number of us supervisors, with a resolution calling for the state to allow us to create a regional transit authority. As you're probably aware, we're not allowed to do that at this time. So I don't know if that's something this committee would want to look at, because I think it would be of great benefit, not only to, out county residents and far flung, but also to folks who live in the city of Wausau. So I hope you take a look at that in the future. And the second item I wanted to put on your radar is we also plan on hopefully moving forward out of committee this month, a proposal to run a pilot program with once weekly service out to Rib Mountain. County will have to pick up the tab on that. We're the only entity, the county government is the only entity that can do that outside of Rib Mountain, the town of Rib Mountain town board, because it falls within our jurisdiction. So what we are proposing is picking up the unpaid costs, and it amounts to roughly, and I know Mr. Soibert has run the numbers, roughly about $10,000 a year to provide 1 day a week service out to Rib Mountain to serve the folks in Wausau, or to serve the folks that are touched by the current bus line. So perhaps in the future, that's something we could look at partnering with the city. We're proposing a pilot program. No extension, we want to see if there's enough interest to continue it. I think we could, if there is enough interest, we could move forward. Obviously, it'd be better to go the other route and create an RTA so we could involve more municipalities and more folks in it. But in the meantime, we have a lot of folks who live in the city of Wausau, and that's where I represent, that don't have access to a lot of shopping options right now. So I hope you keep those two things on your radar, and just know that they're out there percolating. Thank you very much for your time.
Thank you. And actually, that is on our agenda too. We talked about that last month, and Andy and Dave were talking about that it was hoping to get it out of committee, and so we certainly can talk about that. That'd be great. Thanks. We have one more for public comment?
Hi, I'm Derek Burris. I'm here for advocate with the Transit Center. Been a big advocate. I used to drive, but I have issues with license. I agree. I think it'd be a great idea to get the bus system to Red Mountain, but one thing I noticed that would be a hard thing to do is only have it 1 day a week, from 10 to 2 I read. I think we should extend that time because there's going to be a lot of people that want to go to Red Mountain. A lot. I would also like to see the K-bus come back to Weston, Schofield, and Rothschild. I used to live out in Weston. I remember the K-bus all the time. It was beneficial. I actually voted for a little bit of tax money to pay for it. I think the bus is good for a lot of people that are disabled or that can't drive, and I don't want to see it go anywhere or have issues. So that's all I have to say about that.
Thank you. Okay, we have number 3, approval of minutes of the June 18, 2020 meeting. They were in your packet. Is there any additions, subtractions, concerns? Otherwise, I'll take a motion to accept. Motion by Pat.
Motion by Pat.
Second by Kathy.
Thank you. All in favor say aye.
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 Aye as well, and that passes. Number 4, discussion and possible action on transit service request for Island Place Apartments.
Test, okay. As you may recall, we had a discussion, introductory discussion about service to River Drive and Island Place at the last meeting. So I prepared for this meeting a little broader outline of some of the options that would be available. And I would say up front that I didn't choose this as a checklist of things that we could maybe do. I tried to go down the list of possibilities and tell you what the pros and the cons are. And there are some that I would not recommend. As I said in my cover memo, any change in routes has an impact on our customers, and you can make a change that will positively impact customers at the same time you're inconveniencing others. And it's important to keep that in mind. And we always try to do no harm. You know, if we make a change, we want to trying to find a balance where we're not, for instance, diluting a route in order to provide what may be inadequate service to another route. And we've had a number of experiences where we have done that. Route I is one of those routes, so please keep that in mind. So the three options that I took a look at in my exhibit here are a standalone route. There isn't enough territory on River Drive to exist as a standalone route, so it's really not an option for us. You would serve River Drive on the way to and from downtown logically. And so if you could modify an existing route to add this territory, that would be one way. The other way would be to add a new route. For instance, if we were to, provide service to Rib Mountain, this would be a logical avenue in and out of downtown, and we could provide direct service to Island Place in both directions. The other route that is in reasonable proximity is Route J. So Route J exits downtown via 7th and Prospect Avenue and then to Thomas Street. We chose this route instead of River Drive because of a couple things. One is we wanted to get as close as we could to the neighbor's place. This is the closest point to neighbor's place that we serve. Prospect Avenue is a relatively productive segment of street for us. The geography, or rather the demographics in the area are suitable, and ridership is reasonably good. But the biggest trip generator we had in mind was social services, and we were able to provide service on both sides of Thomas Street by using Prospect Avenue out of downtown. Route J is already longer than we would like it to be. The average operating speed is about 15 miles an hour. Nowadays, we like to design routes about 12 miles an hour. And the reason is because we routinely load and unload mobility devices, wheelchairs and scooters and so on. And we need the extra time. When I started doing this, design speed was 15 miles an hour. Those days are long gone. It is very difficult to maintain a safe ride if we go much over that 12-mile-an-hour design speed, particularly when you incur various impediments along the route. Stoplights, number of passenger stops, traffic volumes, and as I mentioned, mobility device. You have to keep in mind the types of facilities you're serving so that you have some idea of the mobility of your passengers, and you have to keep that in mind. I did provide for you an exhibit, Exhibit A, which does show the average route speeds. As I pointed out in the memo, we don't have a single route that is of our optimal speed, which is 12 miles an hour. Route A is the closest, but the rest do exceed it by several miles an hour. So Route J, I would not recommend adding an additional loop to Route J. It's already longer than we would like. I would also not be in favor of using River Drive instead of Prospect Avenue on Route J for the reasons I mentioned. The other route in reasonable proximity would be Route A. Route A happens to be the shortest route we operate. It has a little bit of extra time, and we could add a loop at the beginning of this route on our way out toward the southeast side and the healthcare center. As I said, it is the shortest route, so the operating speed is about 12.7 miles an hour. We do have a number of facilities along this route where we have folks with limited mobility, and so those folks take a little more time to load and unload. Towers Apartments, Sturgeon Bluff Apartments, and North Central Healthcare. We could add a loop at the beginning of this route. We've discussed this with our operators, and I've discussed it with our operations staff, and we feel comfortable that we could add this. It is the only option that I would recommend. Now, there is a downside to adding this loop, and that is that everyone who boards this bus heads to the southeast side. That is not ideal service. We have serviced River Drive in one direction previously, and it was in the other direction to downtown. And we could get people to downtown, they could transfer to any other ride. The downside of that is then, when they got to downtown on the way back, they had to ride all the way to the end of a route before they returned to get back to Island Place. So serving any location in a single direction, depending on where in the route that is, does create some problems. So as I said, this could be accomplished based on the existing route length, but it is not an ideal solution. In the comments, Mr. Harris suggested that we add a loop onto Route I. You cannot just arbitrarily add time to a schedule. In fact, of all of the routes we operate, that is the least likely route that I would add additional mileage to. We deliberately split that route apart into 3 different pieces, and that's the only route we do that to. And we do that because it is so intense for the driver to maintain a schedule that we want to keep the shift on that route shorter. So again, I would not recommend adding it to Route I. And all of the other routes are longer than we would like. You can't just look at the distance of the route and you can calculate a route speed, but you also have to look at the mobility of the passengers, the impediments, all of the stoplights, going out of downtown, for instance. You have to factor all of that in. And so you could have 2 routes that have an identical calculated route speed, but because of the differing impediments on those routes, they operate differently. And so again, Route I is certainly not one that I would advocate adding any additional mileage. I wouldn't add any additional mileage to any of these routes unless it were Route A. Now, if we were to propose a change, we would have to go, we'd have to solicit public input. In the past, we've done public hearings. We do that because Title VI requires that we have a public input process. And so our adopted policy requires that any new segment of street that we provide service, we conduct public input. That's a little over and above what is required by the feds, but we've done that because we've been challenged in particularly residential neighborhoods previously. People have come out and opposed various changes we wanted to make operating on new streets. Any questions?
Can I make a comment? Well, I volunteer at Neighbor's Place answering the phones, and I know a lot of people use that stop to get to Neighbor's Place to get food. So I'm just speaking, and I use that route, but that's not, I don't feel J route is the best option. If any of them, I think A is the best option. And there's 123 apartments in Island Place. Is that 3/4 of a mile from an existing bus route, and would they qualify for paratransit?
The answer is yes. We have 4 individuals currently certified. Just 1 rides on a somewhat regular basis.
Yeah, this is probably theoretical, but if money and equipment availability was not an issue, would there ever be a possibility to add like a 15-minute, instead of the half-hour loop, add a 15-minute loop, go down River Drive, come up Thomas, loop around Transit Center, do it again, just a kind of a downtown loop?
You could, but it would only connect and make transfers with the other routes every other loop. So people would be sitting downtown at the transit center for 15 minutes waiting to make a connection.
Right.
So unless their connection was the downtown, they would sit. Now, in the winter months, that's a problem because we have no inside seating, no heat source, no restrooms. So designing it so that people sit for 15 minutes is maybe not the best idea in the winter months.
So if we were to begin the public input process to modify Route A, we're not locking ourselves into that change, are we?
No, you just need to consider public input. In fact, you don't, you could have 10 people all saying the same thing, and you don't have to do what they're suggesting. You just have to solicit the input, listen to what they have to say, and consider it.
Okay.
And
I
that's up to you.
agree with you, Mr. Seibert, that the modification of Route A is the least unattractive of our options, and we should move forward with the public input policy and consider that route change to serve the people of Island Place.
Could I recommend that you tentatively adopt that proposal and move and present it at public hearing? Just to clarify, because we
I
want
would move that we
to say that
tentatively
we're proposing
adopt
to do this.
Proposal 3, modification of Route A, and move forward to public hearing.
Thank you.
Do we have a second? Or you want to speak?
Speak.
Go ahead. Go ahead.
It happens that I've taken Route 8 quite often, and having car issues or going to the warm pool, so that this route does already take people, the seniors that are living at the Riverview Towers, also at Sturgeon Bluff, goes out to the healthcare center, so if people had appointments or were visiting friends at the nursing home or in rehab, or the new warm pool for PT, that's all available on that route, and it does make sense that to go ahead and add a third senior housing option available there. I wish we could go ahead and consider maybe a downtown route, so that other people might be wanting to connect to other places downtown, but it's too far to walk. And I have known over the years some residents that were in their 80s and 90s living at the actual senior apartments there on River Drive. So not everyone is necessarily driving as they get older in their 80s and 90s. But that also quite a bit of the population using the Neighbor's Place tends to be seniors that we just may not be aware under the radar that being on fixed income and that they may have very limited food stamps. And so going to the commodity programs, I believe that a few years ago, seniors were the biggest population using those kind of services. Thank you.
We have a motion on the floor, and we have not had a second.
I'll second it, is Kathy.
Thank you, Kathy. Okay, since we have a motion and a second, I just want to say about Road I just know that my son last school year had to drive that with a rider buddy, and that is an extremely long loop over. And so that took a long time. I mean, that really is a long loop all the way over to the hospital and around and that. I want to serve this public and I want to do it well. I do, it isn't, like you said, it is not optimal because this is for hopefully grocery shopping and things like that, and they're going to get on the bus and they're going to have a little trip because they're going to go all the way to the North Central and then come back down and then get to the transit center, then go on the transit center out to County Market, Triggs, wherever the bus goes there. I sure would like to have some input from either Supervisor Harris or who has talked to Island Place about if that would be feasible, because I don't want to go and just push something down and say, well, this is what you get. I want to make sure that we have our options open. So I will go ahead with this public hearing, so at least we get something going, but I really would like to hear some feedback about the type of people, the elderly people. That's a long ride, and a long time in a bus, because you're talking, what did you say, Greg? It was 25 minutes?
10 minutes out and then another 15 minutes after.
Okay, so that, plus then another, let's say they go to County Market, another 15. So that's it's better than nothing, I suppose, but it could be a lot. So I'm hoping we get the word out and get some feedback. As you said, we hope that we could maybe get the Remountain trip, but that's only once a week. But that would be a possibility as well, and it would be actually quite nice, because that if shopping is their destination, Remountain, you do have grocery stores, you have other stores, and it may be a quicker fix. So we shall vote. Any other comments or concerns? If not, the motion is on the floor to go ahead with the public hearing of adding a stop in Island Place for bus route number, or letter A. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
I'm aye as well. And Greg, you will work on that for us?
I'm a slow learner, I guess. Public hearings in the age of COVID-19. What sort of public input process would you like us to follow? As I said, we've previously done public hearings, and we've generally had one, during our service day and then one in the evening. What's your pleasure?
I guess if I might suggest a couple of things, I think we have to get creative, but I think one way we could do this is if you gave a video presentation of this route and we recorded it. We could do it right here even. We can put that on public access. We can put that on social media. Maybe we can get some other news sites to use it as a PSA. I think that's an opportunity. So then people would be familiar with what the suggestion is, and they would be able to give electronic feedback. I don't know as far as having a number where people could leave a message, and then folks could listen to those messages. We could have some WebEx. We could, allow people to comment via WebEx, maybe a public hearing that way. It could get a little crazy, but I'm willing to give it a shot. Even with Island Place, maybe there's opportunity to drop off letters or something, or have a limited presentation to some folks. But I'm willing to help you in any way that you want.
Go ahead, Deb.
I was going to mention too that we still have a number of seniors that do not use computers, and maybe there's a way to go ahead with the ADRC monthly magazine of letting that information know, and somehow that they can do written comments or leave messages. So, because we are talking about a number of people that are using that route, but that may not have computer access.
I forgot a big one. We have a city newsletter. We can pop this in there too.
Okay.
I'm wondering if, this is Jen Bizzotto,
Oh.
I'm wondering if maybe Attorney Harris or someone else could volunteer to post a physical bill in Island Place itself, because I imagine those folks are the ones who have the most to say about this, so it might be good to go direct to consumer, I guess.
That sounds good. Yes, we can do, I mean, they certainly can drop off. I don't think we can do, I don't know, but I would assume with COVID, they don't want a lot of people tramping around, but I'm sure that like one person, they could go in there and get the idea, drop off one of these with, what the route would be and make sure they know that, how long it's going to be there, and then they come back to transfer it, wherever they need to go. So that would be a great suggestion. Thank you.
Okay.
Okay, any other questions, Greg? Are you okay on that? All right. So we will move on to discussion and possible action on the procurement of driver barriers.
I have been looking, my staff and I have been looking for what are basically sneeze guards to protect our bus operators while they're driving. There are a number of barriers that are on the market, have been on the market for a while, but they are security barriers, and they are to prevent the driver from being assaulted. What they don't do is provide adequate attention for adequate protection when someone is standing beside the driver, for instance, putting a fare in the fare box. Or they may be a little higher where the driver is, but they don't extend far enough out to provide protection when someone is standing at the fare box. And they're not inexpensive, and so I've been hesitant to propose their purchase. We've been waiting for some product to come to the market that would meet our needs. And I have in your packet a proposed solution, along with a price quote. So this one seems to tick all the boxes. It is 48 inches high. It extends out to the fare box, so that through the entire boarding and alighting process, the driver will have a level of protection. It happens to be polycarbonate plastic and supposedly bulletproof, which is an added plus, I guess. The other added feature to this particular model that I have not seen with any other model is it'll function as a protective barrier either in the open position or the closed position. So in the closed position, it does what any other barrier does. It surrounds the cockpit. This one, when you swing it open, it closes off the aisle, and there are magnets that will come in contact with the stanchion on the other side of the aisle, so it can act as a barrier in that way as well. And the reason we like that is because with any barrier, there are going to be glare issues. And this would allow us to open the barrier during periods of day, low light situations where we tend to have to deal with the glare from headlights, and we can operate with the barrier open and it will still function as a sneeze guard. Currently, we are loading and unloading from the back door, and we're not collecting fares, so it will function in either open or closed position. But this seems to be a very good product. I am proposing to fund this with CARES Act funds at 100% federal money. In order to do this, I had to do a grant amendment, and we did that this week. And they have approved at least the idea, so long as I provide adequate paperwork, that we would do this as a sole source procurement. Now, to clarify, the city has a sole source procurement process, and I'm not following it. We also have our own procurement policy that meets the federal requirements, but there's no local money in this. This is all federal money. So I talked with Mary Ann, and she has no problem if we run it through our process because there's no local money involved. So what I'm asking for is the authority to proceed with a sole source procurement to purchase these barriers as presented.
I make a motion that we proceed with buying these barriers to protect the drivers.
Go ahead, Pat.
I would second the motion, and I have a question that says the driver guard barriers to be installed or replaced in less than 30 seconds. That's not right, is it?
Well, the replacement. So if we were to break the glass, they're very easy to remove the glass and install a new piece. Yeah,
Okay.
it is.
I thought maybe that was supposed to be 30 minutes, 'cause.
Nope,
Woo, okay.
nope. And it's designed to fit the holes that are already on the barrier. We've got a handrail on that barrier behind the driver, and it's meant to integrate into existing holes. So you
Okay.
just take the screws out, put the new one in, and you're done.
Very
Now,
good.
there is a backlog on these, and it's probably longer than when he gave me the quote a week and a half ago. I'm aware they're in Wisconsin next week installing these barriers in Racine and in Madison, and Green Bay is on the list as well.
So if you acquired these things, would you be thinking about greater capacity for the buses and resuming fare collection, or what changes would they make?
Well, this would afford well, first of all, I'm concerned about protection of the operator regardless. As infection rates rise, I think it'll be even more critical that we provide protection. This is another layer of protection in addition to the face mask and the personal hygiene and all of that. But once we have these in place, yes, this may provide a level of protection that we may consider additional capacity. I doubt that we would have them in place by the time school starts, however.
If I may, another question. Drivers have looked at these and feel that they're the best option also?
We had a labor management meeting last week. I actually have a video of these, in action, opening and closing, and they thought it was a very good idea.
This is Jen again. So we talked about allocating funding in our last meeting, the CARES Act funding, to making the bus ride fare free until the end of the year. Would this money, the CARES money we would use to buy these guards, be reallocated from that, leaving us with uncovered, or is this additional funding that would be in addition to that?
We have $3.2 million in CARES Act funds, and this would not affect the fare collection whatsoever. The challenge with the CARES Act funds is we can spend them on any capital projects that we choose to. The problem with allocating these funds on the operational side is that whatever additional expenditures we start to incur from an operations standpoint, we have to figure out how we're going to cover those when the CARES Act funds are gone. With capital projects, we can just complete the capital project and we're done with the project. So we will be bringing forward various projects in the coming months, proposals on how to spend the CARES Act funds. So this would be our first proposal.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Okay, we have a motion and a second. I'm going to try to move this along. We have 15 minutes to get rid of the rest at the most. So all in favor of this motion, say aye.
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 Aye as well, that passes. Okay, Transit Director's report.
Okay, these should go reasonably quickly. These are all just kind of updates. So we discussed the Rib Mountain pilot proposal, and it was brought up by Mr. Johnson in his comments. I just wanted to let you know that the TAC committee, the Transportation Coordinating Committee of Marathon County, has advanced this proposal to the Health and Human Services Committee, and then it will ultimately go, I understand, to the board. And they will consider the local funding. And that's all I really have to report on that. Bus shelter at the former Ponderosa, I did contact the property owner, Arden Emmerich, and we chatted about it. He wanted to know who's paying for what, and I said I was directed by the Transit Commission to let you know of our interest in placing a shelter there. I said we did not make a specific proposal regarding financing at this point. We just want you to know that we're interested in that location. He said, well, how do you normally do it? I said, well, we haven't placed a shelter in a number of years. And I said, when a property owner comes to us, we will sometimes ask them to contribute. He said, well, how is this one going to work? And I said, well, we haven't hashed that out yet, but please keep this in your plans, and we'll have to meet and discuss financing. In terms of, where money would come from, I assume from our contingency fund. We have some sorting to do between now and the end of the year because of the lack of fare collection and the CARES funds. And as we go through the budget process, I think our contingency fund situation will become a little more clear. And perhaps next year we can decide one way or another how to proceed with that. Preparations for the upcoming school year, we are still in limbo. It's my understanding that the district has not chosen a scenario yet, and I think the reasons for that are pretty obvious. They're watching infection rates just like everyone else. As a staff, we are looking at, what does it mean if we maintain a 10-person capacity on the bus? How would we handle that? If we get 4 blocks and we have 10 kids on, do we cut the route short and deadhead to the school and deliver them and then come back? Is it reasonable to expect kids are going to know what's going on if we do that? Or do we stay on the route and stop at every corner where there are kids and inform them that we've got 10 on, we'll be back, which will then take us more time and complicate things a little further. I honestly don't know how this is going to play out. We're looking at various scenarios, and none of them are very workable, to be honest with you. We are polling our drivers now to look at what their availability is to work additional hours, both for sanitizing vehicles and also for driving additional routes in case we try to add additional time to existing schedules. Our part-time drivers have other job commitments, so some will be able to work and some won't. Yeah, none of the scenarios are good, so stay tuned. I apologize, I did not get to the JoJo's Jungle service issue. I did not yet reach out to the school district. We had talked about doing something on this perhaps in the fall if the parks reopen. I just haven't gotten to it, I apologize. Any questions?
Questions, comments, concerns? Go ahead.
I had just heard something on the news recently, and I'm just wondering if this could help with looking at the COVID and the effect on the buses. It seems that there is some UV lights that are used in certain areas of hospitals, and I'm just wondering if that could be retrofit, up towards the roof line in maybe multiple locations on the bus as a way to help make it health-wise safer.
Yeah, as soon as the UV light proposals came out, the component manufacturers inside the bus, like seat manufacturers, have come out with service bulletins recommending that UV light not be used on their products because there's so much plastic on the inside of the bus, particularly in seats, petroleum products, that the UV lights degrades their quality. And so they are recommending that we not use UV light. We do have several fogging machines, disinfecting fogging machines on order still. We have been pestering the supplier to no avail. We also have hand sanitizer dispensers for every vehicle on order still. And we've been pestering the distributor of those as well. I can't tell you how frustrating it is to, finally identify a solution and go after it, and then you stand in line. And as the start of school approaches, it's hard to be patient. But that's where we are.
Anything else?
That's all I have.
Okay. Okay, before we adjourn, I want to thank the mayor and Public Access for videotaping our meetings. Thank you, Mr. Dickinson. This is something that we've really wanted for a long time. I want transparency in the Transit Commission. We talk about things that are very important to our community, and I think that many don't understand what we do or what transit really is and who they serve. And so I'm happy to have this opportunity to get these meetings transmitted to video. Thank you very much. And I will, oh, go ahead, Pat.
Future agenda items, reading through the minutes for this meeting, I was reminded that Mr. Seibert mentioned last month that he is aware of a marketing firm that's being used by Valley Transit, and he would be interested to know that what they are doing for them and what the cost is. So I would ask that if time is available, that you get that information for us next month and see if you can clue us in a little on that, Greg, if you could. And the other agenda item that I know is coming is that there's a proposal by the Southeast Side Neighborhood Association to put some benches at several of the bus stops on Grand Avenue, and we're working out some of the details on that, including the sticky wicket of who's going to shovel the snow, or if somebody's going to shovel the snow. So I broached that with Greg early this week, and we decided to put it on the August agenda, so I'm assuming that will be discussed at that time, and the Neighborhood Association is planning to attend.
Okay, oh, go ahead.
Well, talking about the shelters as well, it would be a good idea to find out, is there some, for those shelters that are bought for certain areas and being on their private property, can that be used as a marketing tool for those properties that do allow a transit shelter?
Thank you. With that, I'll take a motion to adjourn. Thank you.
I'll
Motion-
second it.
Motion by Peckham, second by Kathy. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Aye, and we're adjourned. Thank you very much, everyone.